What is the best winter tire for trucks and SUVs?
Today, we're going to quickly run through 10 very different tires and show you how the race for the best winter tire involves a bit more mystery than people want to admit.
Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. On an independent third-party test, we're talking on an actual track where they measure everything very scientifically. These two tires on the exact same size were competing against each other. This tire won on stopping on ice. But then it turned out they ran the exact same test on snow, and this tire won. So how are you supposed to know what's the best tire to pick?
By the end of this, you'll have an answer, but not to what's the best winter tire. Instead, you're gonna know what is the best tire for your actual use. What's the best tire for you?
One key thing to know about this review is it is not sponsored by any of these tire manufacturers. You are getting our honest opinions and thoughts on these tires.
After lots of testing and research, the 10 tires we're gonna cover fit into 4 subcategories. We're gonna call it the road focused category, a mid-climate multi-tool, off-road focused, and then of course, the winter specialist.
For the 2 road-focused tires we have in this group, you're gonna notice they have a lot tighter tread pattern. It's less voided, so it's not gonna be as good off-road. You're also gonna notice the shoulders of these tires are not very aggressive. Again, that's more for off-roading. What that gets you in the positive is these have much better handling, they get you better miles per gallon, they feel nicer on the road, they're quieter. So there is decent advantages for a road-focused tire if you're gonna spend almost all of your time on the road and very occasionally go off-road. The BFG Trail Terrain really shines at road handling. Now, I know we're talking about winter tires, and if you look at it, it has tons of siping and a lot of things that will help you out with winter performance. The solid shoulder that you see here, this uninterrupted, where every other tire that we're gonna talk about has these blocks, this is inspired from road tires. So this is gonna help you get really good miles per gallon. This is a nice light tire. This thing is good to stick on a Subaru. There's a lot of people that are trying to get like Subarus and small SUVs, a more aggressive tire, and they're going over to these very, very heavy all-terrains, and that's actually really bad for those vehicles. They're just not made to be driving tires that heavy. If you didn't want a loud tire, this is an extremely quiet tire. The middle of the tire is really good at soaking up the snow. So it'll pack all this in with snow, and your snow on snow contact sticks better than rubber on snow. So this is a great snow tire. You can see all the siping. That definitely helps with ice traction as well. The lugs are relatively small though, so those sipes aren't that long laterally. So like we talked about, this tire with these huge lugs and these really long sipes actually gets a little bit better ice performance. But the ice performance on this one is definitely not bad. The one downfall, all the benefits that you get from this solid shoulder with miles per gallon and handling, it does hurt you a little bit in wet handling. So if you live out in the West where it doesn't necessarily rain all the time, but you do have to deal with those occasional snow flutters and some ice in the winter, but you really want a road tire that will handle really well and you don't want to compromise noise and comfort, this is probably the tire for you. There's a lot of features on this. So it is an all-terrain tire. It does have a fairly aggressive looking sidewall. The lugs up here are not alternating. They have this tiny little alternation within a lug. This is a more conservative all-terrain tire that is focused on road performance. It gets a 50,000 mile warranty. The reason it's 50 instead of 60 is they actually use a fairly soft compound, and that's because this tire has a lot of focus on winter performance. If you see the amount of sipes on this tire, it's pretty incredible. So with these huge blocks and these massive sipes going this way, that is why this thing is so amazing at ice. When you brake on ice with this, it's beating out even the trail terrain that has a ton of sipes. They just don't have sipes that are as long as this. So it retains a little bit less snow in the middle here, and that makes that one win on snow braking. But like I said, by all means, this is not a bad snow braking tire. Wet braking is still not the best on this, and that's because this thing has a massive contact patch with the ground, which makes it an excellent dry traction tire. Where you're gonna see true weaknesses in this tire, obviously, is mud performance. We didn't talk about that on the trail terrain, but neither one of these is gonna be great in mud. They're gonna just completely clog up and you're gonna lose all your traction. This one is not necessarily a great tire to run on really heavy trucks. And that would just be because, remember what we said about the compound? It is super soft. Last weakness that comes from a soft compound is steering responsiveness. Now, these aren't terrible. Most people would never even notice this, but when you turn onto your side lugs and back off and you're doing like a race course, a timed race course, you're gonna notice a little slop in the steering because of the softness of the lugs on the side of the tire. Overall, if you lived in a state that didn't allow studs on your tires, but you were really worried about ice performance, this is probably a great tire for you. Okay, so if any of you have ever been interested in snow wheeling or snow camping, I'm gonna take just a really quick break and I'll show you the setup. This truck is about to get changed out with the all-terrains. So these are 39-inch KO2s. It's the biggest all-terrain I can get. That's for better snow traction, so I'm gonna lose the mud tires. If you follow me over here, when I go camping in the snow, the biggest thing I worry about is the cold. So it's usually heat and warm food. So we're using this diesel heater. This guy plugs into the Jackery that I have inside of here. This thing only, when it's running on low, which is all I need to heat the car, it actually only uses 12 watts of power. So when I'm going on a weekend warrior trip and camping 2 nights, this Jackery has more than enough power to power this, as well as my cooking setup that I'll show you in just a second. The way we do this is we just cut out a piece of metal, by the way, and vented the warm air straight in through the side of the door. So all your exhaust and everything stays outside and it's nice and sealed up for the cold. But back here is my sleeping arrangement and cooking. So I actually just have an X-Ped on this platform that I sleep on top of, and I have a minus 25-degree bag. I actually have a 12-volt plug right on the inside of that door as well. So I plug the Jackery in while I'm driving so it recharges during the day. And then I cook. I don't like bringing tons of fuel and gas and everything anymore. So I actually just cook on one of these electric pots. So this is a frying pan. I also have a pot for boiling water. This thing actually uses a lot of power, but the thing is it can boil water in about 3 minutes. And I'm pretty much just warming up like backpacking food. If I really do want to cook like one steak, again, you cook a steak in only a few minutes. So I don't actually use that much power, but this thing can go all the way up to 1500 watts, which is also what the Jackery is capable of powering. If you're gonna do a lot more power use than I do, you have the option of having a solar panel you can throw up and get extra solar. But really, if I plug it in when I'm driving all day, I'm usually topped back up after I'm done. This is one of the most requested tires to review on my entire channel. I finally got my hands on it. We actually have it on a Raptor right now. This Raptor drives about 120 to 240 miles of off-road in the snow and ice every single week. So this tire is going to get put to the test. First of all, they did make a fairly aggressive tread pattern in the middle, but they didn't do that aggressive on the side lugs. You can see that they alternate within a lug again, but the lugs themselves don't alternate. Of course, that keeps it quiet. That means the road handling is pretty good. But when you move over to the middle and you start looking at the size of these voids, this tire is actually capable of decent mud driving. Most of the tires that we're looking at today do not have voids as big as these voids. We're calling this a mid-climate tire. Like if you live in the South, where sure you get a little bit of snow, you get a little bit of ice, but your biggest concern is actually all the mud, this tire could do really well for you. Nokian is famous for their snow handling and being experts at sipes and rubber compounds for cold weather, so I wouldn't doubt it on many of those things. However, there's a couple things to point out. First of all, for snow traction, if you're good at mud traction and you have this big of grooves, a lot of times you're going to toss some of the snow out and it's going to hurt some of your snow traction. They did add all these little bumps in the middle there, and people talk about those to stop rocks from drilling into the tire and popping your tire. But also those help retain snow and they also help eject mud. It's also going to be great in wet traction. You have these huge voids that run longitudinally. These all channel water. It doesn't have a solid lug on the side, so it can eject water out the side. So wet traction on this should be no problem. But the big question is going to be ice traction. When you have this big of voids and this small of lugs, you don't have enough room to run those really long sipes. The question is, do we have enough edges to actually grab and get great ice traction? That might not be a problem. That's kind of why we're calling it a mid-climate tire. One other thing I love that Nokian does is they put these percentage blocks in. So as you wear down your tire, these disappear and you always know how much tire you have left. Finally, this lug, this lug, this lug, there's a lot of really small lugs on this tire. So I see this tire as a good like F-150 and below tire, but when you start to get above that and you start to get into heavy duty towing with the diesels, I would not run a tire with this small of lugs. Making videos like this is incredibly expensive. I mean, you can imagine how much 10 sets of tires costs. So Tire Easy helped us out to make this video. Tires Easy is a website where you can order tires. They ship them to you for free. You actually have a 45-day return policy, and they partner with thousands of local installers so you can get them installed. If you have a local tire shop that you like, but they don't always carry the brand that you want, you can always order your tires from Tire Easy and then go have them installed locally. One of the most interesting things about this tire is this thing scores off the charts for deep snow. It's relatively good in ice. It's great on wet roads. So this tire is just an all-around good winter tire. The old version of this tire, they had an option to get it studded. So if you could get this tire studded, it was actually one of the best winter tires that you could get, and I would recommend it as a winter takeoff. Run it all winter long and then take it off during the rest of the year. This tire actually wears down and gets incredibly noisy and loud, and it's also a little notorious for uneven wear on these lugs. Now, the new RT version, they did change up the lugs. They did reinforce them in between. You can see how this lug and this lug and this lug are all connected. So they're trying to make it stronger to combat that uneven wear issue that this tire had. This tire also had a notoriously weak sidewall before, but it doesn't anymore. Now it has a 3-ply sidewall. Not only that, they gave it these huge lugs on the side to make it more aggressive. So if anywhere where it actually looks like an RT, it's definitely the sidewall. It's got this huge channel with a big void that channels water. Water has two ways to talk about it. There's hydroplaning, which does it trap enough water to start skiing. This one does not do that. All these channels take care of that. Then there's braking. Do these sipes effectively clear the water off of the individual lugs, and can it brake well? This one's not quite that effective at that. These sipes are much more geared towards snow and ice than they are towards water, and that just has to do with the compound again and whether the sipes effectively suck up water. But it's not terrible on wet braking. It's actually pretty good. So all around, strength-wise, deep snow, killer tire. Ice was one of the best ones out there when it had studs, but it doesn't have studs anymore. And then mud. That's why this is in the climate. This is in the mid-climate category. This thing can clearance out the mud just like the Nokian. It's going to serve you really well in the south where it's all muddy. Still going to have a noisy tire. But they did fix the sidewall, like much thicker sidewall and much tougher sidewall. Can't make a tire video about winter tires without mentioning this, because for so long against so many competitors, this thing just scored off the charts on mud and deep snow. The off-road focused category for winter tires is the category that I tend to live in. And the reason is, you never know. Sometimes I'm in the snow, sometimes in the ice, sometimes I'm in the rain, but sometimes I drive down to Utah in the middle of winter and then I want to go off-roading in Moab on rock. So I can't get something so aggressive many times that excludes me from being able to do that. So for example, on the Land Cruiser rock crawler, I'm not gonna run a studded tire because I want to be able to go rock crawl that any time of the year. So this category is the do-all everything tire. So does it score as high as, say, a winter specialist? Not necessarily, but it doesn't make it a bad winter tire. This is a very proven tire in this category. People loved the AT3w. The biggest beef that they had on it was it didn't really hold up very well on heavy-duty trucks. So they came back with the AT4w where they reinforced all the lugs. They made the lugs bigger. They changed up the siping to strengthen the tire to make it be able to handle large trucks. So this is one of the first tires that we've actually talked about today where you could actually venture into the world of like F-150 and above and not necessarily worry about it just destroying itself. They make different versions of this tire. So if you're going to go into the heavy duty trucks, you want to make sure that you're picking up a 3-ply version that is the heavy duty version. So you can get an HD version of this and it's going to hold up just fine. This tire has done very well at everything. So that's like your classic all-terrain. It's not scoring 10s on everything because it's impossible to score 10s on everything. You can't score a 10 on mud and also on wet traction. So this is trying to play the middle ground. You have these great channels here that are good for channeling water. This thing has fantastic wet traction. It's been proven in that. It has great sipes for moving water. It has good snow traction because you actually have small enough gaps in here. It's not voided enough to eject all the snow out. So your snow traction is also great on this tire. Your ice traction is what I would say mid-high. You do see that this version of the tire has a little less siping than the old version. The older version would have scored a tiny bit higher on ice traction, but they did this to be able to make a stronger tire for people, to be able to run longer and to run on larger vehicles. This tire has a 60,000 mile warranty. One way that they get there is it has extremely deep tread. That gives you that extra life. There's only one downfall to that. When you have this deep of tread, one of the weaknesses you could see this tire is its weight. It is a little bit of a heavier tire compared to some of the other tires in the category. As far as the off-road durability, I can attest to it. I ran this on my Tundra all summer long. I took it on multiple trips to Moab, rock crawled it, took it on a ton of different obstacles. We actually have an off-road budget build competition coming up for a whole nother series that I did where we tested these tires and spun them out on the rocks forever, and they held up just fine. It's an exceptionally tough tire. I actually still run the old version of this, the KO2, on my Land Cruiser when I go snow wheeling. And the main reason that I do that is I can get it in a 39-inch tire, and the middle of this tire is so good at collecting snow and giving you that snow-on-snow traction when you're wheeling in deep, deep powder. This tire is just as good at that, if not better. And eventually we'll replace it because they're, eventually going to make all the sizes in this that they make in the KO2. This is one of the best deep snow tires that you can actually get out there and off-road with. I mean, I'm sure Nokian or Hakkapliitta would argue with us. I just can't get their tires here in the US. This tire is excellent in deep powder. It is very good in ice. In fact, it improved in ice because if you notice, they added about 30% more siping to this tire. So ice-wise, it does amazing. Mud, it is still not great. This tire is optimized for dry traction. It's optimized to have a huge footprint on the ground at all times. If you have a tire that's that optimized for dry traction, it will always hurt you on wet traction. They did improve the wet traction where they have channels that go, 2/3 of the way across the tire to channel water out, whereas the old channels were only like this long. So it's better in wet traction than it used to be because of that and also because of the additional siping, but it's still never gonna be the strongest tire on wet traction as long as it has this high of a focus on dry traction. It's just a trade-off that you can't beat. They did try to make it better in mud, and the main way that they did that, they gave it much more aggressive offset lugs on the side. If you notice how deep this cuts in and how far this sticks out, it's a fairly aggressive side. They added in these notches, they added in bigger grooves on the side for here. They're basically trying to give you this section of the tire to deal with the mud because they know the middle will just clog up. This tire has a 50,000 mile warranty. This tire has notoriously strong sidewalls. This tire is a great multi-tool. Again, just like the AT4w, is it gonna score 10s all across the board? No, it's gonna score high all across the board. It's an excellent implementation of an all-terrain tire. The one place I'll give this thing credit, it probably scores close to a 10 on dry traction, but this is a video about winter tires, so probably doesn't matter that much. The Nitto Terra Grappler G3 is the new kid on the block. I actually have this on my Ford that we just built into an off-road logging truck, so we will be testing this tire as well. There's a couple things that I really do like about the design of it though. First of all, it is an aggressive tire. It has your offset lugs. It's geared towards off-road. If you look at how thick the channel is on the side here, you know, this thing's made to be an aggressive AT tire. But they did a couple other cool things. They did what's called a dimple sipe. That's what these little bumps are in all these sipes. These dimple sipes actually perform really, really well in water. It's got this channel that goes all the way along here. Those are always good, so you're not gonna deal with any hydroplaning when you have a channel like that. It's gonna be able to channel water effectively outside the tire. There is quite a bit of siping on this tire, and then this weird, funky design in the middle that is very different than almost any other tire. The one thing you gotta realize, it gives you this huge surface edge that runs from here all the way to here to catch as an additional edge against things like ice and rock. But one of the principles of design that they used when they were making this tire is they said that they were designing a tire that was going to be made for heavy duty trucks. We're talking bigger trucks than the diesels. Other than that, you're going to do okay in mud, like all terrains. Okay is okay. This channel should clear mud a little bit, but these individual lugs on the side, they don't have the biggest gaps. In fact, they're smaller than the gaps on the KO3. So I would tell you it's not going to be the best mud performer. It's just going to be in that lower okay, like all terrains usually are. Snow-wise, I think the sipes are going to help you a lot. Ice-wise, I think the sipes are going to help you a lot. So all around, this looks to be a competitor in a lot of ways with the AT4w, where you're talking about a tire that's capable of handling very, very heavy trucks, but also performing well in the winter. Probably one of the biggest surprises about this tire is that it is extremely light compared to its competition. So when you compare it to a Falken AT4, it's much lighter. When you compare it to a KO3, it's even lighter than that when you're comparing common sizes. So it's a pretty interesting tire. It is the new kid on the block, so I can't really call out any distinct weaknesses yet because it just simply hasn't been used enough. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention this tire in this category. There's an interesting thing that happens though with this tire. This tire looks so aggressive. It's amazing on rock. It's actually amazing even in the mud. So when people think of it as a winter tire, they have low expectations because tires that have that big of grooves and are able to clear out mud that well, people don't typically think of those as being good winter tires. But when you go out on wet roads or ice or snow in this tire, it is actually very good in the winter and the snow. It's a 3-peak snow rated tire, which is incredibly amazing to me considering how big the grooves are and how amazing it does in mud. It defies logic on how good it is in mud and how good it does on ice. These are two categories where you usually just can't be amazing at both. And definitely wet traction. Again, wet traction, it's hard to be good at wet traction and dry traction, and it seems to be good at both. So it's kind of riding that fine line of an all-terrain tire that can do all of it pretty well. It's probably scoring like 7s on most things. And then there's a few categories like dry traction, rock traction, where it's scoring kind of off the chart. It's not going to score as good in mud as a mud tire, but it's probably scoring as good in mud as any AT tire out there. It's definitely in the running with the Goodyear Duratrac RT. It probably outperforms that in the mud. The Mickey Thompson is an amazing tire. It's definitely worth looking into. It has a 50,000 mile warranty on it. And it's not going to last longer than that. They ran an asymmetric tread pattern on that, where almost all these other tires, in fact, all the tires we're talking about, have symmetrical tread patterns. Is it going to beat all these? No. There's definitely tires we talked about today that have better winter traction, but as far as an all-around tire scoring high on everything, the Mickey Thompson is right up there, and it's definitely the most aggressive one in the mix. One of the weaknesses of the Mickey Thompson is this is a heavy tire. This is not going to be winning any trophies in the miles per gallon category. And even in handling, once you steer off the middle on the highway actually feels pretty good. You're surprised because it's so aggressive. You think, wow, this feels like a pretty good AT tire. But the second you turn on to the shoulders, you start to feel more like a mud tire. If you love to off-road a lot and you spend tons and tons of time in the dirt and you definitely also have to worry about mud a little bit, this is probably the tire for you. Okay, well, if you're still here, we are to the winter specialist category, which is a category that I really love because it's not so focused on a tire that can do all those other things well. It is focused only on the most elite of the elite tires, specifically for winter performance. The General Grabber ATx is a tire that I never really thought I would know this much about. Not the most aggressive all-terrain tire, and it also has a 2-ply sidewall, so it's not exactly one that I was gonna run off-road really, really hard. But where it won me over is it actually comes pre-drilled for studs. And the tread pattern is really, really great for deep, deep powder, and it has enough siping to help you out with water and with ice. So by the time that you add studs to this tire, all of a sudden it goes from being a medium winter performer to kind of being a winter powerhouse. And that's exactly what I've been using it for 2 winters. If you look at that stack of tires that I have up there, those are 37s that I run on the Tundra in the winter. Now, the other thing is, if it snows up there and you're not so worried about the ice, like I said, this center of this tire will grab onto a ton of snow. It will hold the snow in the tread, and you get great deep snow traction as well. So all around, this tire with no studs would be middle upper list of tires for a winter snow video. But the second that you add studs, all of a sudden it turns into a winter specialist. So I'd highly recommend checking this tire out if you live in a state where you can get studs, and especially if you want oversized tires. This is about the biggest tire that I could find that I could also get studded that also had a good tread pattern for snow. I don't run it in the summer. I wouldn't, because I do enough rock crawling and sharp rocks out in Idaho. I'd be worried about puncturing the sidewall, honestly. But as far as a dedicated winter tire with studs, this thing is absolutely incredible. One other cool thing about this tire is they actually have a specific layer inside the tire that is made to pad the tread. So this is an incredibly comfortable tire to drive on road. So even though it's a little bit more aggressive AT and would fall into a category almost close to those, except for its 2-ply sidewall, it's actually a really comfortable road tire, and it actually gets really good tread life. I'm 2 winters into that one, and it barely looks worn at all. So it only has a 50,000 mile warranty, but I guarantee you if you rotate this tire and your alignment is good, you probably get a decent amount of life on it, even above the warranty, because I'm just not seeing the wear hardly at all. The Nokian Hakkapliitta LT3 is a winter's tire. This tire pretty much laughs at the competition when you're talking about winter tread. Just look at this thing. This thing is a beast. This is the only tire in the mix that is a directional tire, where the entire tread is only made to go one way so they can increase the science of grip. This is the only tire in the mix that's really, all these other tires were all-terrain tires. This one looks aggressive. It has individual side lugs. It's not called an AT tire, but it is an LT tire. You can put it on your light trucks, and this thing stands the test. So I think that this is worthy to be in this discussion. We ran this with our community that we have out here on the farm and in the shop. We have another Ford Raptor that has run this for 2 years and for 2 winters on that 67-mile dirt road that goes up into the mountains, into the Sawtooth Mountains. It's basically solid ice in the winter. First of all, this tire has held up really well with 2 seasons. So it's a very durable tire. But secondly, this tire's traction is just incredible. When you have this tire, you don't ever need chains. This thing is incredible. Nokian wasn't even satisfied with studs. Like this General Grabber, it's drilled for studs, so you can add studs to it. Nokian was like, you know what? We think normal studs are lame. We're gonna make our own. So they completely re-engineered how studs are. And if you can see these, they have these like tiny little triangles in the middle, and they made stainless steel studs. And then where that stud goes through the tire, it's even constructed different. So if you're braking Instead of that stud bending over and losing its traction, they redesigned them to make sure that they stand up tall and straight to always give you the most traction. They made them out of stainless steel so they don't rust. So even if you live in a state where they put salt down, these won't rust like normal studs where they just lose their tip and start to break down after a couple years. So this tire is nuts. Sure, they put a ton of attention into the sipes. I mean, look how many sipes there are per lug on this thing. It's absolutely crazy. It channels water out effectively through this. It has a center channel that's unbroken, so you never ever fully leave the road at any point on the middle, which is an important point of not breaking traction. So this is a winter specialist. Would you off-road this tire? Absolutely not, unless we're talking about an off-road dirt road in the middle of winter that's covered in ice and snow. Would you run it to Moab and take it on the rock? Absolutely not. But if you guys are watching this video and hoping that we are going to cover an absolute winter specialist tire that you put on at the beginning of winter and you take off at the end of winter, this is the tire. This set is going on my wife's Land Cruiser for all the ski trips that she does with the kids. If you want that guaranteed to make it home safe unless somebody else runs into you tire, this is kind of that tire. Now, sidewall, it has the same type of sidewall as the other Nokian tire that we talked about tonight, where it's reinforced with basically the same thing as Kevlar by a different name. So this has a guaranteed sidewall. If you do rip this sidewall, they'll give you a new tire. This one's worth checking out if you just live someplace where ice is up. You know that frozen rain that coats the whole road and the whole road turns into an ice skating rink? This is the tire that just shreds that. Doesn't even matter. You just drive around town like it's normal when everyone else is sliding off the road. So check out this tire if you're looking for a true winter specialist tire. The guys at Nokian, the gals at Nokian, whoever's designing these tires, they truly know what they're doing. There's a reason all the big vehicles in Iceland that are doing tours on glaciers are running Hakkapliitta tires. These guys kind of know where it's at when it comes to winter tires.